And we're starting off the list with something pretty exciting. Possible alien megastructures on Tabby's star. So Tabby's star, scientifically known as KIC 8462852, which I think is a much catchier title. Tabby's star, just a bit of a mouthful. But it's become pretty popular in recent years. Astronomers have spotted unusual and irregular dimming patterns on the star. The star's brightness dims unpredictably, and at times way more than what's expected for your typical star. So because of the strangeness that seems to be going on with this star, it's led some to speculate that there could be alien megastructures on it. And yes, even scientists are saying it's a possibility. I know it sounds wild, but the idea is that advanced extraterrestrial civilizations might be constructing massive structures like Dyson spheres or swarms around the star. And the purpose of these hypothetical megastructures could be to intentionally block or harvest the star's light to be used as energy. This would cause the dimming effect that we see. Now, this is just one speculative hypothesis. There are others, but it's pretty cool to think that this may be a genuine sign of life out there in space. Next, let's talk about fast radio bursts. So fast radio bursts, or FRBs, are powerful, fleeting signals from deep space that last just a fraction of a second, up to 3 seconds at the most. Scientists use radio telescopes to detect these bursts, but they're still not exactly sure what causes them. One theory is that FRBs could be born from cataclysmic events like collisions between neutron stars and black holes, creating ripples in space-time that generate these intense signals. And there is also the possibility that they come from advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. What makes FRBs so strange, though, is the amount of energy that they send out. In just a millisecond, these bursts release as much energy as our sun emits in 3 entire days. And what's frustrating, though, is that they appear so sporadically, it's really tough to sit down and study them. So while there are possibilities as to what could be causing these signals, they're still pretty much a complete mystery. The Great Attractor. Now that sounds like some cosmic horror right there, and it kind of is. The Great Attractor is a massive gravitational area of the universe that's pulling our Milky Way galaxy and numerous other galaxies toward it. And yeah, that's kind of scary. The Great Attractor was first identified in the 70s when scientists noticed that our Milky Way, along with other galaxies around us, weren't moving in the direction that gravitational forces alone could explain. Something massive and hidden seemed to be tugging at everything. Now, we can't directly see the Great Attractor, so astronomers have to rely on indirect observations and measurements to understand its existence. It's this unseen force of nature, very Lovecrafty. It's thought to be a concentration of both visible and dark matter, which is the invisible substance that makes up a large part of the universe. More on that later. So what happens though when we eventually get pulled into whatever this thing is? Luckily we'll be long dead, so no point really worrying about it. But a great cosmic force like this, it really does remind us how small and insignificant we are in the grand scheme of things. Next up we have space orcs. Yes, astronomers have spotted orcs in space. Orc standing for odd radio circles. Not quite as exciting as spotting green goblin monsters in space, but also less alarming. Like, would we really be able to lay our heads down at night and sleep comfortably knowing there were orcs? I don't think so. So odd radio circles. These circles are strange astronomical objects, and scientists aren't entirely sure what causes them. Scientists have spotted them by scanning the sky using radio telescopes. They're basically circular formations and don't match any known astronomical objects or phenomena. They're not galaxies, they're not stars or supernova, they're a total mystery, and because of this, they have the nickname WTF. Now, some scientists think they could be shockwaves from cosmic events, like an explosion or a collision that creates ripples that we detect as circles, but they could also come from unknown objects or phenomena we just haven't discovered yet, which is pretty cool. We got a very large space rock coming our way, a mega comet. Now, luckily, it's going to pass us by about 1 billion miles and won't be coming until 2031, but this thing really is massive. This thing, which was first spotted in 2021, is the biggest ever observed comet. It's 100,000 times the mass of your average comet. The comet is so big that at first astronomers categorized it as a minor planet. What's freaky about this is that there's almost definitely much larger comets whizzing around out there, and although this one luckily isn't going to make contact with us, there could be another one hurtling our way as we speak. That just hasn't been spotted yet. Speaking of terrifying things hurtling towards us, let's talk about Andromeda. So Andromeda, the largest and nearest galaxy to our Milky Way, just happens to be on a collision course for it. One day it will collide with the Milky Way, and when the Milky Way and the Andromeda galaxies finally collide, it won't be a sudden smash. The process takes a very long time because of the vast distances between the stars, and stars are so far apart anyway that it's unlikely they'll collide individually. But the night sky will change, constellations will shift, the appearance of the night sky will be very different in the distant future. But this collision won't be happening until billions of years from now, so there's no need to really worry about it affecting life on Earth or even the distant descendants of humanity. Fingers crossed we'll have gotten our act together and we'll be like far off on other planets by the time this happens. Next, let's talk about supernovas. Supernovas are incredibly powerful explosions that occur when massive stars reach the end of their lives. Now, the good news is that the nearest star capable of going supernova is still quite a distance away from us. We're talking many light years, but what if a supernova was so powerful that even if it was super far away, it could still affect us? What damage could it cause? Well, it could potentially affect Earth's atmosphere. The explosion releases an enormous amount of energy, including intense radiation, and this radiation, in theory, could interact with Earth's atmosphere, leading to the breakdown of the ozone layer. The ozone layer is crucial for life on Earth because it absorbs the majority of the sun's harmful UV radiation. So, in this situation, we'd be in pretty big trouble. We'd basically burn up like in Terminator 2. Next up, we have the mystery as to what dark matter and dark energy consists of. Now, we know there's a lot of stuff in a galaxy, stars, planets, and gas, but when scientists calculate all the visible matter, it's not enough. The galaxies are spinning faster than they should be based on what we can see. Something extra is needed to explain this, and that something is called dark matter. Dark matter doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect light, which is why we can't directly see it. It's the invisible scaffolding that's holding the visible parts of the galaxy together. But the invisible part, dark matter and dark energy, makes up 95% of the known universe, and that's a lot of mystery, energy, and matter. What we see, not just on a day-to-day basis here on Earth, but also when we look up at the billions of stars in the sky, that's still just barely even a sliver of reality. The universe is also constantly expanding. We know it's expanding because galaxies are slowly moving away from each other, but over time, this expansion continues to speed up. Something is pushing the galaxies apart faster and faster. Scientists refer to this unseen energy as dark energy. Basically, dark matter is the invisible glue holding galaxies together, and dark energy is the mysterious repellent force making the universe expand. And we don't know what it is. Next on the list, we have the Tunguska event. This was a powerful explosion that occurred on June 30th of 1908 near the Tunguska River in Siberia, Russia. It's known as one of the most mysterious events in modern history. So there was a large impact or explosion that flattened about 80 million trees over an area of about 830 square miles. The shock wave from the blast was felt thousands of kilometers away. Strangely though, there was no impact crater found at the site. This led scientists to conclude that whatever caused the event must have disintegrated in the Earth's atmosphere before reaching the ground. What most scientists think is that this was caused by the airburst of a large meteoroid or comet. The energy released by the explosion was estimated to be equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT, making it about 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Luckily, this happened in a very remote area, so only trees were affected, but that also means there weren't many witnesses. But a handful of people did report seeing a bright bluish light in the sky, accompanied by a series of thunderous noises. But of course, there's always been this question as to whether this was caused by a space rock or something else. And finally, I couldn't make this list without discussing the WOW signal. The WOW was a strange radio signal detected by astronomer Jerry Amon in 1977 while he was studying radio waves from space. Because he couldn't make out what the hell the signal was, he just wrote WOW on the printout of the signal, thus it got that name. It was a unique and very strong radio frequency that lasted about 72 seconds and came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. The signal was at a frequency of 1420 megahertz, a frequency that's usually associated with hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. What's strange is that the signal was never detected again though. Scientists naturally figured if it was a natural phenomenon, it would repeat, but from what we know, this was just a one-time thing. So is it possible this signal could have come from maybe an alien spacecraft? Yeah, it's a possibility. The WOW signal is still known as the strongest candidate for extraterrestrial radio transmission ever detected.
But coming in at number 10, what came before the Big Bang? So the Big Bang was what started the universe billions of Earth years ago. But what came before that? We honestly don't really know, and our smartest minds theorize the answer is extremely simple. Stephen Hawking noted that the answer could literally be nothing. We have no observable evidence of what came before everything. I come from the Top 10 Nerd channel, and this question has been answered in different ways in comic books. In Marvel, they say that we are in a version of the cosmos, meaning there was a previous version that ended up getting destroyed and remade. But if that's the case, what's doing the destroying and the remaking? If nothing came before, then what the heck caused the Big Bang in the first place? If there was something before, what would that do to the way we think about the universe? And if something is responsible for it all, I don't know if our tiny little human brains could actually handle that. Number 9. Gravity paradox. This question is a pretty simple one, but yet it's got a lot of scientists kind of completely stumped. Why can a refrigerator magnet defy an entire planet's gravitational pull? It's basically asking why gravity can be such a strong force in the universe but also be such a weak one in other instances. Some scientists believe that gravity may well be as strong as other forces like electromagnetism and the force that holds the nucleus together, but they think that gravity's influence is dissipated because it leaks into extra dimensions. That's just a theory though, because we actually have no idea. That one little question about refrigerator magnets has kind of brought the whole idea of gravity into question. If it is being dissipated into extra dimensions, that opens up way more questions than it actually answers. Obviously, I'm not smart enough to answer this question. I am, after all, just a YouTube host, not a scientist, but I would just think it's all subjective, right? Like, a planet is so huge that the things that are on the planet would have to follow different gravitational rules, right? And like a magnet is still being affected by the Earth's gravity, it's just so small in comparison that it can do its own thing? I'm literally talking out my butt right now. I honestly don't know what I'm talking about. We should just move on before I make myself sound more dumb than I already am. Number 8. How big is the universe? I don't know if you guys have seen that clip from Pete Holmes' stand-up routine, but he talks about how none of any of this makes any sense. The universe is constantly expanding and infinitely. Infinity is getting bigger, and like Pete says, that makes no freaking sense. If the universe is constantly expanding, and we know it's constantly expanding, then when posed with the question of how big the universe is, someone would be able to give you an answer, but we don't actually have a number for that because we literally don't know the shape of the universe, and we don't know the actual rate at which the universe is expanding, we just know that it is. To me, this question almost doesn't matter for most of us because even if we were to try to go to the edge of the universe, no one here can live long enough to make that journey. It takes roughly 9 to 12 years to get to Pluto, and that's just the furthest planet, yes, I'm calling it a planet, in our solar system, which itself is just an extremely tiny speck in our Milky Way galaxy, which is also just a tiny speck in the vastness of the universe. It's all too big. Is what I'm basically saying here. Number 7, expansion. The last point does lead me nicely into this next point though, which is the fact that while we know the universe is constantly expanding, we can't actually put a pin on the rate at which it is actually expanding. For the past 6 years, the Hubble Space Telescope has been calculating the speed at which the universe is expanding, and recently came up with what is accepted as the most precise measurement to date, except that the rate stands in direct conflict with independent measurements of the early universe's expansion. That's unsettling for astrophysicists because it means we know even less about our universe and its ways than we thought we did. But if we do learn this one, would that be a good thing? Or would it just help us all feel more and more meaningless and tiny? Of course, these are scientific questions, so our emotions about these things aren't really important, but I'm just saying, I already feel small and insignificant. Number 6, the multiverse. If you have been keeping up with the MCU, then you are at least familiar with the idea of a multiverse. Essentially, it means that if you go far enough into the universe, things would have to start repeating because there's only a finite number of ways that particles can be arranged in space and time. According to theories, the universe is flat and infinite, so those particles would have to repeat, creating another universe with another Earth and yes, another you. And because it's all infinite, there would be infinite versions of you who could be doing the exact same things as you right now, or maybe they wore different clothes today, or had a completely different job, or honestly, there are an infinite number of variables here. The thing is, we will most likely never know if this theory is true or not. And even if we did, that means there would be an evil alternate you, or maybe you are the evil alternate one. I don't know about that one, man. I don't like that. Number 4, what is time and does it even exist? So, when we talk about time, we imagine it flowing, like a river, like a time stream. But for something to flow, by definition, it has to flow with respect to something else, like how a river flows with respect to a river bank. So, does time flow with respect to something else? Another kind of time? Maybe? I don't know. The idea seems kind of stupid and kind of just made up, but most likely the flow of time is an illusion that we created on our own with our brains to organize the information constantly flooding in through our senses. We also have a strong sense of a shared past, present, and future. However, the idea of a common present, meaning the time right now that everyone's in, doesn't actually exist in our understanding of relativity. Precisely how someone else's time is sliced up depends on how fast they are moving relative to you or the strength of the gravity they are experiencing. These effects are only really noticeable with things like the speed of light and supermassive gravity, which is why they are not super obvious to us in everyday life. But it basically means the idea that one person's interval of time is not the same as another person's, and that one person's interval of time is not the same as another's. If you watch Interstellar, there's a pretty basic explanation of this, as different members of the crew age differently as they split up to different places around a massive black hole and other planets whose gravities affect all the characters differently time-wise. It's just, my brain hurts actually a lot right now. Number 3, do we have everything wrong? Isaac Newton's theory of gravity was accurate enough to fly spacecraft to the moon, but it began breaking down when extremely high speeds and very strong gravitational fields became known to us. Then, Einstein's theory of general relativity came in and was a better alternative. It correctly describes the bending of starlight by gravity, the orbital decay of binary pulsars, and the warping of space-time around a black hole. Really cool stuff like that. General relativity is currently physicists' best theory of gravity, but it doesn't answer everything, obviously, which is why history will probably repeat itself and physicists might discover small effects that would hint at an even better theory of gravity. Einstein's theory has passed most of the things that might test it with flying colors, but physicists will keep putting their theories on the rack. One day it may even fail, not being completely wrong, but just one small part to a bigger puzzle that none of us will be alive to learn the answer to. Number 2, Earth Martians. Oh boy, this one's a doozy. Okay, so look, we take it for granted that life on Earth actually began here. We just kind of assume that that's the way things worked. But that's not actually necessarily accurate. Apparently, scientists are actually finding evidence that life on Earth may have instead come from Mars, and was brought to this planet by like a meteorite at some point in Earth's incredibly long history. The trouble is that scientists themselves can't even agree on which area of science will provide the answer to this conundrum, and let alone whether science is even where we should look to answer it, which, like Pete said about the universe's expansion, that makes no frickin' sense. What do you mean? What do you mean we can't? What? Number 1. Aliens. Since the early 1960s, scientists have theorized that it's extremely likely that intelligent life exists outside of Earth, and I for one totally agree. The math kind of has to mean it's true. The universe is ever expanding, infinite, and contains countless other galaxies just like ours, with planets that would be in the similar position as ours is to their sun, and with the right conditions for life to actually thrive and grow, like the planet Kepler 186f, which you should look up if you haven't before. It's kinda cool. The trouble is that we have basically zero scientific evidence to prove that the life could potentially exist, or does in fact exist. In fact, we have no hard scientific evidence that any life exists outside of Earth. Although with that planet, we actually just can't see that far down onto like the surface of the planet to see what's going on. So it could be there, we just can't see it. Although we are finding some fun stuff on Mars that may say otherwise. The time may be drawing closer and closer to when science confirms that there is life elsewhere in our solar system or the galaxy, or at least somewhere in the universe. And I really hope I'm alive for that. The thing that gets me though is if whatever is out there is advanced enough to see us too, and if it is advanced enough to see us, then is it advanced enough to make it here? And if that's the case, then we are not as advanced as that, and we should stand no chance in defending ourselves against something like that, assuming they would want to hurt us, which as humans we would just assume they would, and if they didn't, I think our stupid human brains wouldn't be able to handle the fear of not knowing, and we'd do something dumb like attack them, and then we'd be gone because we just can't stand up to that kind of thing, you know what I'm saying?
Number 10. The Venus Wave. Spotted by the Akatsuki spacecraft in 2015, a massive wave was observed traveling across the surface of Venus. Stretching for 10,000 kilometers, the wave continued up until Venus's cloud tops, where it suddenly became stationary. It is good to note that the average traveling speed of clouds in Venus' upper atmosphere roughly caps out at about 100 meters per second. The source of the wave is undetermined, with theories being tossed around that it might have been caused by a rogue gravity wave, which itself would have been caused by the displacement of a fluid from its preferred position. As Venus is an extremely volatile planet, and no research craft has survived for longer than a couple of minutes on its surface, these claims are difficult to prove, and the secrets of this blue dot remain hidden beneath its swirling clouds. Number 9. Oumuamua. On October 19th, 2017, an object was sighted from the University of Hawaii. Classified as a comet, the object is thin and flat, or roughly a quarter of a mile long. But more importantly, it was picking up speed. If you don't remember middle school science, an object in motion remains in motion unless acted upon by an object of similar or equal mass. In space, because there is nothing to act upon the object to slow it down, any velocity will be kept until impact. But an increase in velocity doesn't make sense without propellant. So what was moving Oumuamua? Well, the theory goes that it might contain a chunk of solid hydrogen, which was slowly falling off of the object's surface and allowing for an increase in speed. However, studying the comet is completely impossible, as it's the first observed object to fly into our system and then fly back out. So this theory is just kind of unconfirmed, and we may never know where the traveler came from, nor where it did go. Number 8. PSO J318.5-22. Discovered yet again by our friends at the University of Hawaii, PSO J318.5-22 is a rogue planet, floating through space without a star for it to orbit. It's estimated to be roughly the size of Jupiter, but as to where it came from, no one has a clue. Theories about some hoping that it may have been kicked away from its home star due to a gravitational anomaly, but who can say? None but the rogue planet know. Number 7. The Diamond Planet. Discovered in 2004, Janssen is an exoplanet close to the star Cancri A. Years later, the planet was determined to be a carbon planet, a theoretical type of planet with more carbon than oxygen. As a result of this, it is theorized, due to the method of which diamonds are created, that within Janssen could lie an absolute abundance of diamonds. However, getting to it would be difficult. See, Janssen's proximity to the sun is so small that average temperatures are estimated to be around 17,000 degrees Celsius. So good luck getting close enough to snag some stones. Honestly, the scariest thing to me is that someone might actually try this, for reasons that I doubt even the greatest minds could truly comprehend, beyond, I guess, greed. Number 6. The Vampire Star. Halloween's over, but the true horror fans know that it lasts all year long. Not just limited to our solar system, the existence of Hammer horror classic monsters has clearly reached the stars, specifically symbiotic stars. See, when two stars are formed in proximity to one another, their mass will draw in the hydrogen from the other star, which will deplete its life, turning it into a white dwarf. From there, the white dwarf will go supernova, annihilating both in the process. What scientists have difficulty explaining is how such celestial entities exist, and worst of all, how some have survived the supernova. It's hypothesized that Betelgeuse, the star, not the ghost, is what's called a cannibal star, and before we observed it, Betelgeuse must have sucked the life out of another star. So why can we still see Betelgeuse today, despite the fact that the other star would have gone nova? Wait, did I say it 3 times? Number 5. The huge LQG. Quasars are extremely supermassive black holes that are surrounded by accretion disks, which then release their generation of a beam as pure radiation. We'll get into that later. Cool. And slightly terrifying, right? Well, the huge LQG is made up of a cluster of 74 quasars. 74. Originally believed to be impossible, this massive cluster of black holes and radiation defies both science and sense just by its existence. The huge LQG has a rough span of 4 billion light years, easily the largest structure in the universe, and by far larger than our own. Number 4. The Boots Void. Do you know what's more terrifying than something? Nothing. And the Boots Void is just that. Nothing. A region of space where there is simply nothing. And to be clear, this isn't Barnard 68, the dark nebula that eats light. No. This is just nothing. Several galaxies do surround it, but none exist within its center. There's nothing within the void. There may never have been, and there maybe never will be. Or maybe there's just something keeping everything else out. Number 3. The incoming megacomet. Did you know that every year 17,000 meteorites fall to Earth? Now, most of these just burn up in the atmosphere, usually long before they're visible. The ones that can be seen are the ones that are actually dubbed meteors. But what if a meteor couldn't burn up in the atmosphere? Spotted by the Hubble telescope, the comet Bernstein is currently flying right towards us at around 72,000 miles per hour. 60 miles across, the meteor is roughly half the theorized size of the asteroid responsible for ending the age of the dinosaurs. But nevertheless, this cosmic catastrophe could cause considerable consternation were it to collide with our rock. So, when does it get here? Well, don't bother looking up because it isn't gonna come within like a billion miles of us. Even so, if it changes course, even slightly, we could be looking at a pretty dark future. Number 2. Gamma ray bursts. There's a distinct beauty to black holes, their swirling light collapsing into a mass so dense as to erase light itself. Their byproducts are gamma ray bursts, these streams of light that fire out of what would be visualized as the top and bottom of the black hole. It sort of looks like a gyroscope, only one that, defies physics physics and erases matter. Well, as it turns out, even the most beautiful parts of this flower can be its deadliest, as gamma ray bursts are explosions of high-intensity radiation that could cook anything in its way in a matter of seconds. So it's a good thing that, stars aren't dying out regularly, and even better that our planet has never been hit by a gamma ray burst before. Oh wait, it actually totally was. Well, the effects wouldn't exactly be, Death Star adjacent. If close enough, the radiation would absolutely be lethal, and close in terms of spatial proximity could be anywhere, honestly. Comforting thought. Number 1. The CMB cold spot. The CMB cold spot was discovered by the Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe, a device primarily constructed to measure cosmic background radiation and test the theory of the Big Bang. The cold spot was added to a structure that is titled, I'm not joking, the Axis of Evil, a name given to any anomaly that deviates from the Copernican principle. Far larger than the Boots void, temperatures within the cold spot are around 0.00007 Kelvin. The average in space, of course, is about 2.7 Kelvin. What caused the creation of the cold spot is unknown, but physicist Laura Mersini Houghton claimed that it could be an imprint from a parallel universe.
In our number 9 spot today, we have the complex galaxies. And with these distant galaxies comes a realization about their structures. Some of these galaxies are far more complex than astronomers had once expected. In a study into the deep field image, researchers found a surprisingly high number of distant galaxies that are shaped like disks. Basically, while using Hubble, scientists believed or had a theory that early galaxies were often more distorted by their interactions with neighboring galaxies, and that these distant galaxies were more irregularly shaped than ones nearby, which, not unlike the Milky Way, are normally more regularly formed in the shape of disks. This changed though with the Webb observations, because this telescope revealed that there are up to 10 times as many distant disk-shaped galaxies than what was previously thought. According to some experts, because of the fact that this contradicts what was once thought about the evolution of galaxies, that much more research needs to be put into this specifically to figure out exactly what this means and how it changes our theories moving forward. In our number 8 spot today, we have cosmic noon. Moving on a little later into galactic evolution, one study into Webb's observations focused on cosmic noon, which was a period approximately 3 billion years after the Big Bang. It is an important period because of the fact that this is the time when star formation peaked in the universe and the most light was created. An astronomer at the University of California, Santa Cruz named Ren Seuss examined images taken by both Hubble and Webb of galaxies at cosmic noon, and this is when Ren realized something. The infrared wavelengths detected by Webb showed that the massive galaxies looked significantly smaller than they did in the Hubble images. Of this discovery, Seuss said, quote, "It potentially changes our whole view of how galaxy sizes evolve over time. Based on Hubble images, it was thought or suggested that galaxies start out small and grow larger over time, but these Webb images are showing that maybe this isn't the case and that things might be a little more complicated than anticipated." In our number 7 spot today, we have the exoplanet atmosphere. While there are many tasks that the James Webb will be taking on through its career, one of them is to study alien exoplanets, most especially to figure out what their atmospheres are made of. To do this, when the exoplanet passes in front of its parent star, the light from the star, of course, passes through the planet's atmosphere before continuing onto its journey wherever. Whatever the atmosphere is made up of, whatever the elements are, it changes the nature of the light, and this is something that James Webb can pick up on. WASP 96b is an exoplanet that we've had our eye on for a while now, and it is a giant gassy planet that orbits close to its parent star, and now it is being used to test Webb's abilities before moving on to more challenging targets, such as Earth-like planets that orbit sun-like stars. There are a few incredible discoveries that Webb has made in doing this, like the first detection in an exoplanet atmosphere of sulfur dioxide, and new readings are even revealing signs of active chemistry within the atmosphere. This is all to say that these tests are yielding incredible results, which is extremely promising when it comes to the future and the understanding of exoplanets. In our number 6 spot today, we have star formation. People who are busy studying galactic chemistry have been receiving some more complicated and interesting data from Webb. One analysis examined light emitted by galaxies that had a redshift of 5 or greater. In this analysis, they found a surprising richness in elements like oxygen. This is important because astronomers had thought that the process of chemical enrichment, which is the process process where stars fuse hydrogen and helium in order to form heavier elements, they thought that this took a while, but this analysis made them realize that it is happening in earlier galaxies. This has led experts to say that they really need to start rethinking the speed at which we believe star formation occurs. In our number 5 spot today, we have the star life cycle. Speaking of star formation, Webb is showing us both the birth as well as the death of stars. Images produced by Webb of both the Carina Nebula as well as the Southern Ring Nebula are incredible. The Carina Nebula is a star nursery. It is the birthplace for new stars, and the powerful Webb instruments are able to pierce through the gas clouds and show us unbelievable moments in these stars' creations. On the other end is the Southern Ring Nebula, which is produced by a star not unlike the Sun shortly after its demise. By being able to study these different star life stages, we can piece together more about the stories of these stars themselves. In our number 4 spot today, we have starlight. Back in September of this year, 2022, the James Webb Space Telescope spotted a set of concentric angular rings around a giant but distant star. Of course, we needed to know more, so researchers dove further into the images and found something incredible. A study revealed that these ripples turned out to be puffs of organic dust that were created and then spread across the universe by an odd star system. This might just seem like a cool space occurrence, but this marked the first time researchers were able to find evidence of starlight moving visible matter beyond our solar system, which is absolutely incredible. I mentioned how this star system is odd, and that is because it is made up of 2 stars that orbit each other. In our number 3 spot today, we have Stephan's Quintet. You may be familiar with this term because it was another one of the first photos publicly released from the James Webb Telescope, but it's possible that maybe you didn't know exactly what you were looking at. Stephan's Quintet is a visual group of 5 galaxies, 4 of which form the first compact galaxy group ever discovered. These 4 galaxies will all likely eventually merge with each other, but until that happens, we have these stunning visuals of them all dancing together. Space telescopes like James Webb have provided some insights into some emissions coming from between the galaxy group. It is now believed to be shockwave in the intergalactic gas, which is caused by one galaxy falling into the center of the group at, roughly the speed of several million kilometers per hour. Just space stuff. In our number 2 spot today, we have the DART mission. So I'm sure we all remember earlier this year when NASA's DART mission slammed into an asteroid just to see if we could potentially redirect an asteroid in the future if it were on a collision course with Earth. They tested this planetary defense mechanism and it actually seems to have been largely successful, and among those watching was none other than the James Webb Telescope. Since the mission, information that Webb collected has been sent back to us on Earth, and it is giving us more insight into how to ensure we are using this technology to our advantage and to see how we can improve it. In our number 1 spot today, we have the cloud discoveries. Speaking of exoplanets, James Webb has observed one that has evidence of silicate-rich clouds. Well, it's actually a brown dwarf that is about 20 times the size of Jupiter. It is called VHS 1256b, and it orbits 2 small red dwarfs and is 72 light years away from Earth. Webb has also used its skills to reveal details in a gas cloud called Doradus 30, which received the nickname Tarantula due to its very spooky appearance. This Tarantula Nebula is located about 161,000 light years away, and it resides in the Large Magellanic Cloud, and I mean, aside from our very own Milky Way, it is the brightest star-forming region in our neck of the cosmic woods.
In our number 10 spot, we have it's a death trap. An unsettling reason for not returning to the moon would be because it's supposedly a bit of a death trap. Apparently, the moon's surface is littered with craters and boulders that threaten safe landings. Well, yep, that checks out as one of the biggest reasons. Why would we risk all that hard work and money if once we're finally there, the craters on the moon are the reason for the project to fail? We should definitely maybe send some moon rovers there to help us figure out that equation first. Apparently, before the first landing, the US government spent billions to develop and launch and deliver satellites to map the surface of the moon, but they still can't predict meteorite impacts that might happen after. So anyways, it's a mission just to plan the landing, and even still, they'll never 100% know that everything will be fine. I can see why they may be hesitant. In our number 9 spot, we have the ending of the Cold War. One of the reasons it is said that we never returned to the moon was because the Cold War ended. Initially, getting to the moon, well, it was a race against Russia. NASA, as we know, won and got to the moon first, but in any case, they still wanted to go back to get a ton of research before Russia. But once the Cold War ended, the tension and competition wasn't as high. Yeah, that makes sense. That to me isn't really a good enough reason to not have gone back to the moon in, the last 50 years, but I could definitely see it being a motivating factor for not needing to go back as quickly. In our number 8 spot, we have theoretical benefits. Allegedly, the benefits of going back to the moon are largely theoretical. Of course, scientists believe that potential research would be a key reason to go back, but it doesn't seem to be a good enough reason. Apparently, this isn't a practical reason, and the risks would be too high for such an adventure to occur. If the moon were to eventually be used as a refueling place for larger expeditions, then that's a different story. But as it is, there isn't a good enough reason to return, and the government doesn't want to throw away billions on the possibility of benefits. Makes sense. In our number 7 spot, we have low funds. This one is probably one of the biggest and most likely reasons. Funds. Not that NASA doesn't already have a ton of funds for research purposes, but imagine how much more they would need to get to the moon again. They would have to build a whole new rocket, which I don't know how many employees that will take, plus you have to pay the astronauts a ton, plus all the mathematical scientists that plan the trip and whatever they do. I don't work at NASA, okay, so I have no idea how many employees this expedition would require, but my point is that a lot of time will be needed and therefore a lot of moolah. Probably one of the biggest reasons why the presidents aren't backing another landing because of how much money from people's taxes it will require. But it is curious why only approximately 0.4% of the US federal budget gets given to NASA these days, when back in the 60s, NASA was receiving around 4%. So anyways, this low budget reasoning makes sense, especially if NASA can't show a clear profit margin from doing the trip. The government is not going to want to contribute to this. In our number 6 spot, we have aliens reside on the moon. This is a fun theory, and one that China almost thought to be true with their U-2 moon rover discovered a mystery hut on the moon earlier this year. It turned out to be a rock on a crater rim, which truly made me laugh out loud. But still guys, who knows, it might be possible. Why not? We can't be the only living creatures in the universe. Also, anyone remember Neil Armstrong apparently commented on seeing big, enormous creatures on the moon? Even though he denies it, NASA employees confirmed that they heard him talk about them, so it's very possible that we aren't returning to the moon because of the enormous moon aliens. Who knows? In our number 5 spot, we have aliens on Earth. This is another fun theory as, hey, we all don't know what's happening in Area 51 and all the underground secret bases of the world, so maybe there are aliens on Earth persuading us to not go back to the moon. There have been many reports of the gray people in the underground bases, and then of course the reptile people are a popular point of discussion. So who knows, perhaps us humans aren't just humans anymore living on this planet. Perhaps there are shapeshifters around us telling us to not focus on the moon for whatever reason. Could be because they are from it. In our number 4 spot, we have billionaires might go there anyway. One of the reasons NASA might be holding off on returning to the moon could be because billionaires like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos might be going there anyways. Why bother wasting money on a trip if we could ask the billionaires funding their own trip to let us, tag along for research reasons? I'm sure NASA could buy a seat on their spaceship. It's probably more affordable than spending the money to build their own ship and pay their own employees. Makes sense to me. In our number 3 spot, we never went in the first place. Well, obviously this is a popular one in the online forum chat rooms. The infamous debate. Did we even go to the moon ever? Or was it filmed in a Hollywood studio? Well, look, I guess it could be possible. They could have a Hollywood-style studio in Area 51 where they filmed it, and then none of the employees would say anything because they've already sworn to secrecy anyway. Or perhaps their memories could have been wiped and they wouldn't remember anyway. This would be quite unsettling if true, but I honestly don't think we'll ever know for sure. I wish I could go to NASA, watch the astronauts get in the spaceship, watch it take off, and then watch it land days or weeks later. Then I would be 100% convinced. If you know someone who has done this, please share your experience in the comment section below and make all the non-believers believe. In our number 2 spot, we have slim pickings. An issue that NASA in particular might be dealing with that is a little unsettling is the lack of young people interested in the idea of being an astronaut or scientist these days. Apparently, astronauts say that American kids were polled and they say that they dream more about becoming YouTube stars rather than astronauts, and that's a big problem for NASA. Not to mention that we now live in a society of kids that want the quick fix success route and don't know the value of working hard. Apparently, the average person that works at NASA's Johnson Space Center is closer to 60 years old. Yikes. NASA astronaut Rusty Schweickart was quoted as saying, "That's not where innovation and excitement comes from. Excitement comes from when you've got teenagers and 20-year-olds running programs. When Elon Musk lands a rocket booster, his whole company is yelling and screaming and jumping up and down." Honestly, it makes sense. Young people aren't, worn out yet and still see life in so much color, and that is what is required for new creative ideas to flow. In our number 1 spot, we have political reasons. Political reasons? Pfft. Why is it always about politics? Well, apparently this is the number 1 reason that NASA has not returned to the moon. Apparently this reasoning has been spoken out quite often over the last while. In 2019, NASA's administrator, Jim Bridenstine, reportedly said that, quote, "If it wasn't for the political risk, we would be on the moon right now. In fact, we would probably be on Mars." There is much speculation as to what the heck that means, but perhaps another country with more power than the US might have a hold on them? Or, by political risk, do they mean that it would be such a large spend of people's tax dollars that it may be hard for one party to be re-elected? In any case, that statement is so vague, and the people should really be harder on NASA to just, tell the truth. It's one thing if we're not going there because it's not necessary. It's another if we're not going there to be strategic for election time.
Number 8. Eye of Sauron. The Rings of Power just finished its first season as I'm recording this video, and since I still have Tolkien on the brain, this photo of the Fomalhaut system made the cut. A relatively young system at 440 million years old. For comparison, our sun is about 4.5 billion years old. Fomalhaut and its surrounding disk of space dust have been the subject of a lot of controversy in the astronomical community. The images captured interest scientists not only because they look like they came straight from Mordor, but because of the zombie planet that has been tricky to find. The photos taken show that the dust ring is not centered around the star, but is shifted and elongated into the eye shape, which indicates something of large mass on the outer parts of the system, which scientists believed could be a Saturn-sized planet. Investigations have been conflicting over the past few years, with researchers believing on and off that the planet exists, and with Hubble images being inconclusive, which is why we call it a zombie planet, because it keeps coming back to life in a way amongst researchers. The system may have gotten its strange ring shape from all of the comet activity as well, with over 2,000 comet impacts daily, many of those comets being over 1 kilometer wide. That would definitely kick up a lot of dust, so one does not simply walk into Fomalhaut. Number 7. Sunken. Okay, I threw this one in because it's currently spooky season while I record this, and having a jack-o'-lantern sun on the list couldn't be passed up. In 2014, the Solar Dynamics Observatory captured this creepy photo of the sun smiling right at us, like its features had been carved right out of a pumpkin. Solar flares and activity on the sun can be quite unpredictable, and the fact that it lined up to look like this is pretty cool. I just hope that there isn't some giant alien up there carving into our sun to decorate their intergalactic porch. But if that's the case, what are we gonna dress up Earth as? If Earth had a Halloween costume, what would it be? Let me know in the comments. Number 6. Greater pumpkin galaxies. Sticking with the Halloween theme, 120 million light years away in the Canis Major constellation, these two two galaxies called NGC 2292 and 2293 have earned a much cooler name, the Greater Pumpkin Galaxies. Because of their orange color and the fact that they look like a jack-o'-lantern, these galaxies doomed to collide in what we will see as slow motion make for a pretty spectacular image. Not to mention that NASA released the photos on Halloween a few years ago. Though it may be a fun Halloween-themed image, there is a scary truth about them. They're on track to collide with each other. And as the two galaxies draw closer, they begin to spin around one another and could eventually form one single spiral galaxy. But when that happens, there will be some cosmic consequences. Things smashing into each other at ludicrous speeds and exploding out into the darkness with the force of many nuclear bombs. But we don't actually know what will happen until it does. While some may say it reminds them of the Great Pumpkin, I would say that it looks more like a 100,000 light year across Jack Skellington. Number 5. The face of Mars. This freaky famous photo was taken by the Viking 1 orbiter in 1976 and shows us what is very clearly a face embedded in the surface of Mars. A massive one at that, judging by the scale of what's around it. It very clearly has two eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Uncanny, really, especially for being what NASA has called a cosmic coincidence, because with enough time and space, literally anything can happen. When investigated again in 2001 with a better camera, it was not to be seen. Was it just a mound of rocks and dirt that was blown or moved away, or was it something more sinister, watching us from the red planet, not knowing that we were finally looking back? Number 4. Black hole in the Milky Way. Black holes, one of the biggest driving forces in the cosmos. These places of pure darkness were once stars that shone bright in the sky, but when they died, instead of going supernova and exploding into a blast of color and energy, they collapsed in on themselves, creating a singularity so dense that it sucks everything around it in, with a force that nothing can escape, not even light. And while this may sound scary, they are incredibly necessary for our understanding of the universe to function. In fact, there are a few in our galaxy, but the biggest is Sagittarius A, the supermassive black hole at the center of the Milky Way. This is the second image ever captured of a black hole, and it's insane that we've developed the technology to be able to find and photograph them. Sag A sits at the center of our galaxy and is the reason why it spins and has its signature spiral shape. But the scary part is that it is not only spinning our galaxy, but consuming it, adding one more way that our galaxy can meet its demise. Not sure I'd rather that or colliding with another galaxy. Either way, none of us are going to be around to see it. Number 3. Hand of God. This is what's known as a pulsar wind nebula, and what you're seeing is a cloud of material that was ejected from a dying star, captured by X-ray telescopes functioning at different energy levels, lower energy detections appearing in red and green, and higher ones in blue. While we can explain what this stellar specter is made of, we can't quite figure out why it takes the shape it does, and NASA is still wondering if the pulsar particles are interacting in a specific way to make it look like a hand. When the new readings were taken, the ones appearing blue, they realized that one part of the hand is actually shrinking at a different speed than the rest, implying that the two areas were physically different, and making us all wonder what the hand is reaching towards. Number 2. Ghost Nebula. Known formally as SH2-136, really rolls off the tongue. This reflection nebula has some pretty startling shapes appearing within it. A reflection nebula does exactly what you think. It reflects light from nearby stars and galaxies. The energy from stars nearby is not strong enough to ionize the gas of the nebula, but it is enough to illuminate the dust and make it visible to us. Looking at the picture, it's a no-brainer why it's earned its much cooler name, the Ghost Nebula. You can see little figures waving from the edge of the space cloud. They even appear to have horns. I'm not sure what that's about, but I'm here for it. Give me all the spooky space specters. Again, this is just one of those cosmic coincidences that we can't explain, and that if we existed at any other place in the universe, we may not see. So we're pretty lucky, I guess. But let's hope our luck holds out for our final entry. Number 1. Roaming black holes. Now, I told you about black holes, those things that suck in and destroy anything that comes near, even light, with no chance to escape. But they are pretty detectable, and we should be able to avoid them since they're such a huge cosmic entity, right? Well, what if I told you that there are many out there that are near impossible to detect? Because they're moving. That's right. Known as roaming black holes, these death spheres fly through our universe, devouring everything in their path. Only detectable by fluctuations in mass and light, they were most likely two black holes that attracted each other, then slingshotted off one another and were flung out into space. But here's the kicker. The Hubble telescope actually detected one closer than anyone would want, in our own Milky Way. While pointed near the center of the galaxy at Sagittarius A, a fluctuation in light and space shows that we may have
one of these devouring our galaxy, and we would never see it coming until it was too late. So there you go, one of my, and possibly now one of your fears, roaming black holes. Space is crazy and terrifying. It is absolutely baffling and will never cease to impress me the technology and knowledge we have developed in our time as a species to investigate beyond our own planet. Especially since, at the end of the day, we're all just monkeys with car keys.
Coming in at number 8. Space snakes. It's one thing when there's an alleged alien sighting from your neighbor down the street, but it really feels a lot more intense when the creature in question was actually spotted by an astronaut while in space. The astronaut in question is Dr. Story Musgraves, who is not only a decorated former astronaut, but also a physician and consultant. And according to him, he witnessed a strange creature on 2 separate occasions while in space. Quote, "On 2 of my missions, and I still don't have an answer, I have seen a snake out there, 6, 7, 8 feet long. It is rubbery because it has internal waves in it, and it follows you for a rather long period of time. The more you fly in space, the more you see an incredible amount of things out there. And that sort of brings to you really a certainty that other living creatures are out there." Now, of course, many were skeptical of his space snake sighting, and theories like it being a hose or a piece of space debris have been used to discredit him, but Musgraves has never once wavered and insists on what he saw. Quote, "Other living creatures are out there, and other civilizations that have been around for a million years that are doing unimaginable kinds of things." Moving on to number 5. Eridanus supervoid. The Eridanus supervoid is an extremely large and eternally empty chunk of, well, space that, from what scientists can tell, is around 1 billion light years in diameter. For reference, 1 light year is supposed to be about 9 trillion kilometers, or 6 trillion miles. So times 9 trillion by 1 billion, and that's how big this giant supervoid is. Now, as far as astronomical standards go, that's a hefty size. And this supervoid is so large that so far it can't be explained by the current theories of the universe, which is pretty unnerving in a few ways. The most straightforward theory about the supervoid suggests the existence of an insanely massive black hole that would have the power to suck in stars, planets, light, and dark matter, among other space stuff, and that with each inhale of the universe, it will get stronger and stronger. All of which sounds horrifying. But that's not the only theory. Some researchers propose the void is actually evidence of a parallel universe, maybe even one being controlled by a horde of ruthless aliens. Of course, the second theory requires some more concrete evidence, but either way, this supervoid still seems pretty freaky. Moving on to number 4, the end of the universe. It's no secret that eventually, billions of years from now, the sun will expand into a red giant and kill the Earth. But what is a little more up for debate is how the entire universe itself will die. According to the BBC, some scientists feel the universe will perish via heat death, which suggests that heat itself will die and the entire universe will freeze just a tick above absolute zero. Another theory, called the Big Crunch theory, which is almost the exact opposite of the Big Bang, suggests that the universe will continue expanding until that's all it can expand, and when it can expand no more, everything will contract and collapse into itself. Then there is the Big Change theory, where bubbles of dark energy consume our universe, rendering everything inhospitable to the point where even atoms might not form anymore. And finally, the Big Rip theory, where dark energy would expand, become more massive, and just tear galaxies to pieces. Now, these are all just theories, of course, but each one sounds as terrifying as the last. At least it won't be happening for a very long time. Coming in at number 3, a scary supernova. To break it down, supernovas are pretty much giant star explosions, and they aren't uncommon, so it's not usually something that would seem too scary. But apparently, the ASA SSN-15LH was a supernova unlike any other. For starters, it was a superluminous supernova, observed in June of 2015, that originated 2.8 billion light years away, which would mean that it actually exploded 2.8 billion years ago. But what makes it special, or scary, I guess, is that scientists can't explain it. Unlike a regular supernova, this one was 10 times brighter and considerably more powerful. Also, when astronomers analyzed the light it was emitting, they couldn't find evidence abundance of the hydrogen that should have been present. The initial explanation for the massive supernova involved what's called a magnetar, which is kind of a magnetic neutron star, and the theory was that the powerful magnetic field it provides could have added extra energy to the expanding ball of superheated gas. But then they realized that this scary star emitted more energy than a magnetar would have been able to provide. And apparently, even months after the boom, it was still giving off more energy than the entire Milky Way. Honestly, the more they try to figure out, the more confusing it seems to be. And if some of the smartest people in the world can't figure out what's going on, well, that's pretty scary. Moving on to number 2. The Great Attractor. As if giant exploding stars and potential alien life forms were not enough to get you freaked out, there is also a phenomenon happening in the galaxy that is essentially the universe equivalent of being dragged toward an inescapable doom. Essentially what's happening is that the Milky Way, its companion galaxies, and various other galactic stuff are all moving toward an area of space at a speed of 2.2 million kilometers per hour. Now, to ease you a bit, while that is very fast for us, it's apparently slower in space terms, but we still don't really know what is dragging all the matter in that direction. According to scientists, the speed at which we are moving implies an area of space creating a massive gravitational force, roughly equivalent to 10,000 galaxies. And since it is sucking in everything within a considerable distance, this mysterious region has been dubbed the Great Attractor. However, we can't actually see it, so we're kind of being dragged blindly. The reason being is that the Great Attractor sits in a region of space referred to by astronomers as the Zone of Avoidance. And it's called that because it sits exactly on the other side of the densest part of the Milky Way, thus observing it through all those stars and massive clouds of space dust is nearly impossible. How fun, right?